and I'd been working as a psychologist for many, many years, and I thought, oh, I want to start writing about my work. And so my first book, I Am Aspian Woman, or no, my I Am Aspian Girl, was really just about describing what I was seeing in the girls that came into my clinic. And so I was seeing this profile of real abilities and gifts. I mean, I've seen females sort of with all kinds of gifts. But I do see in one difference is in the caring profession, that I see more females who go into or becoming teachers or nurses, special needs teachers in particular, or social workers. So I tend to see that as a difference. But across genders, I see a lot of performing artists, which is a very big area, from singing to poetry to writing books to being actresses and actors and so on and so forth. So I would say that in my experience, I tend to see more females in the caring professions. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of females, and there's not a stereotype. There's not a tomboy stereotype. And then some significant challenges as well. And those sort of traits varied from mild to severe. So, and the core theme that came out of that narrative-wise was a sense of feeling different from their peers. And that, of course, also goes from feeling just a little bit different from their peers all the way to I'm just not from this planet at all. And I've got one person who she made it to, she's in my second book, I Am Aspian Woman, and she's my mentor, and she made it through the second round of the Mars project. She wanted to go to Mars because she doesn't like it here on Earth. So I think another theme is many of the women and females and girls are not being supported.
Please define what you mean not being supported.
They're not being understood, first of all. They're being misdiagnosed, and they're also being put on medications that aren't based on those diagnoses, that aren't helpful, and that a lot of times are not supportive. And also there isn't the awareness from professionals, so psychologists or psychiatrists have an understanding that Asperger's is how it presents in males. So when a female presents, then she can't have Asperger's if she's making eye contact, or if she's having a superficial conversation, or if she's showing some appropriate body language, because, she's taught herself to do that, and she's copied and mimicked her peers. So she knows how to do that. But if you dig a little deeper, then you can find out that she's got some social skills problems, and she's got some anxiety, and she's really trying hard on a day-to-day basis just to get through the day. Girls also were found seem to be more social, whether that's a cultural thing or whether they're just more social in general than boys, but not as social as, say, your typical girls. So they're still struggling. It also seems to be that the higher IQ, or the higher the intelligence, the more able the girl is to mask. We use the words masking or compensatory strategies, which is actually an area that I'm really interested in writing about right now, is how do these girls manage to pass for normal or manage to get through so many years using certain skills, I think that culturally females are expected, they have certain expectations on them more so than males do. And I think that that makes it much more challenging for them to try to fit in. And if they don't feel like they want to look like how society wants a woman to look, that there might be something wrong with them.
This concept of the highly sensitive person has been written about extensively by someone named Dr. Elaine Aron, and you could check out her website for more information, as she's really the expert on this. Her last name is Aron. Dr. Aron and others believe that the highly sensitive style reflects a personality style that is observed in a person who is more impacted by environmental stimulation of all kinds. The criteria for highly sensitive personhood includes things like throughout their lives, they have been called hypersensitive by other people. They themselves feel like they've always been overstimulated by their senses, for example, their sight, their smell. They can be easily upset by seeing violence in the media or movies or other disturbing imagery. They will really try to avoid stress in stressful situations, get really overwhelmed when there's a lot to do, be overwhelmed by large groups of people, identify themselves as being emotional, is how they talk about themselves, and many times being regarded as introverted or shy, having higher than normative pain sensitivity, being very attuned to the subtle reactions of those around you, or even subtle variations in the environment, noticing something has changed or moved, being very detail-oriented, avoiding making mistakes, and trying to please other people. So these are the kinds of things that Dr. Aron and others sort of describe as sort of the highly sensitive person.
Highly sensitive people are people who, it just like it says, they have a higher sensing capacity or talent or ability to more finely sense or more acutely sense things that in themselves, things that are going on outside of themselves and environments. Very often, highly sensitive people have very refined nervous or high-strung nervous systems. Very often, they are highly intelligent. Very often, so intelligent that they're capable of processing a lot more data or allowing a lot more data into the computer than many people are capable of doing, and then trying to manage all that data. Highly sensitive people are often very intuitively developed out the gate. If not highly intuitive at right from birth on, that they easily developed those sixth sense capacities. So they're more adept at sensing the things that are invisible to most of the population. Things like highly sensitive people can very often sense things like electromagnetic fields in environments. They'll sense it at a very physical level. They might feel burning or headaches or various things. I have that particular, I am a highly sensitive person, and I have that particular sensing capacity. I can sense radio waves and electromagnetic fields more as physical things than most physically, feel them in the environment, whereas other people, they pass through the other people and they don't feel it at all. I think everybody's probably affected by it, but they don't feel it, is the difference. The highly sensitive person may feel something like that. Highly sensitive people, other invisible things they might sense in the environment. They might be able to sense emotional energies, imprints that people leave behind. That happens very regularly. Thought patterns that can get stuck in environments. Highly sensitive people are often very empathic, where they can actually sense the emotional activity going on in the person they're standing next to or the person they're having the telephone conversation with, directly feel the emotional responses. So some of the other things can be heightened, like physical senses, like heightened senses of smell, hearing, like where you'll, sound sensitivity. If the sound is too loud or if the sound is very cacophonous.
Actually, have people in my life who likely meet these criteria for being a highly sensitive person. And they're actually deeply empathic, quite self-aware. And I have to say, out of love and respect, I try to do the workarounds with them, suggest activities that make sense, monitor the environment to sort of make things, at least in my world, easier for them. But when I think about what would or has happened to them when they got into, or if they got into a relationship with a narcissistic person, I actually shudder to think about what would happen to them. So as you read this list, you may already be rubbing your head and feel worried for someone who has this highly sensitive personality style. Perhaps it's you who has a highly sensitive style, getting into a relationship with a narcissistic person, because you're absolutely right if you're thinking this, it's not going to end well. Well, what could go wrong if a highly sensitive person got in a relationship with a narcissist? Let's break it down. Highly sensitive people are actually vulnerable to narcissistic relationships because of their empathy and their commitment to going out of their way to get it right. And they may be less likely to spot red flags as to try to get it right. They'll be more focused on getting it right than on spotting the red flags. Or they may gaslight themselves and feel that, here I am again being too emotional, instead of seeing the narcissistic behavior within the relationship as being the problem. Within the narcissistic relationship with the highly sensitive person, there is so much more potential for gaslighting, for the narcissistic person to actually call the highly sensitive person out as overly sensitive. And it's a label that a highly sensitive person may actually agree with, even when the highly sensitive person is having an appropriate reaction to what is real emotional abuse.
Very difficult to have a healthy, functional relationship. Highly sensitive people, or they're also known as empaths or passive, or people with what I call an imprint patterning that comes from their family of origin, often play out their programs and end up with abusive partners.
We do know from just even a recent research study, but I've known this for quite some time, but there's time in between clinical, evidence and research-based evidence, is that females are at a very vulnerable, or due to their social naivety, do get taken advantage of a lot. So when it comes to dating, I think it's really important that they learn about safety skills and what to do if they don't feel comfortable, and when not to be put themselves in a place where they may be unsafe because of their literalness. They may misinterpret other people's intentions, which get them into quite some danger. So I think having a mentor about dating and reading about dating and how to be safe is extremely important. So when I work with teenagers and girls, depending on where they are developmentally, we're often talking about safety and dating and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and how to protect yourself and things like that.
There are different types of boundaries. Time boundaries, physical boundaries, conversational boundaries, relationship boundaries, personal boundaries, and content boundaries.
To set boundaries that feel safe, to understand your personality style, and to not pathologize or gaslight yourself. To have trusted people that you can turn to